Livable City, a magazine for architects, planners, designers, developers, leaders. Learn how great cities around the world make it work. Subscribe at mylivablecity.com.
Okay. Good day to all who are watching this event. I think there will be obviously a lot of participants, but I particularly want to welcome the mentors who have helped these participants reach their goals. And want to congratulate the mentors for the fact that their students have been shortlisted for this award. My name is Shyam Khandekar. I am the chairman of and founder of DAIDA Foundation, which is a Dutch-based foundation. I'll come back to my background because that's also very relevant to this particular program. DAIDA is a Dutch foundation which has a mission to raise the quality of life, condition of the quality of life for those at the bottom of the pyramid, particularly in the cities of the emerging economies. And for that reason, while we also fund some projects in different parts of the world, we have been doing it for the last, I think, 7-8 years. We remain a small foundation, but one of the things which we have really taken to heart is to help encourage students to take on projects for their thesis which are socially relevant and not necessarily only aesthetically pleasing. And that is the reason why DAIDA decided to institute these awards, every time based on a theme which is related to raising the quality of life in cities for all. So last year, every year we decide on a particular theme. Last year it was climate change. So theses which were either design or research thesis related to that could be submitted. And this time it is minorities. The subject minorities, we as jury members would like to translate it in the broadest of its sense. Cities consist now, I think, all over the world of all sorts of minorities, either because of their age or because of the fact that they are the new citizens to a city, new entrants to the city, or they are poor, or they are a certain caste or language or immigrants or whatever. Also have taken part, and each of them has looked at a different minority. They've been very varied, like somebody concentrating on the lot of children, somebody else concentrating on the lot of indigenous people in Uganda, where at the edge of the city, their way of life in the forest is being damaged because of what is happening in cities. Then there was an entry for the widows in India, particularly. There's a city where a lot of widows, once their husbands have gone, families bring them to this city, Varanasi. So there are a lot of widows in this city. So they're very varied contributions. We had a tough time deciding on which ones to shortlist, but I must say that at the end, the 9 people we have shortlisted have been agreed to by all the 4 jury members. The interesting part of this program, which we have now been doing for a few years, is that the participants are from different continents of the world, and very often their thesis is not necessarily for that particular city in which their university is, but maybe sometimes also for a totally different country. So we have had participants in the last years also from ranging from South America till Asia, and of course, many also from Africa. I would like to introduce you to the jury members who have helped judge this shortlist, but who will also be helping judge the final outcome of the awards. So The jury members are made up of, I thought we will get on the live screen now the jury members. Afaq? Yes. So the jury is made up of four members. Let me start in the way they have been displayed here. So on the left top, you see Liesel Vivier. She's an architect planner, originally from Zimbabwe, studied in South Africa. That's the continent she originally comes from, but has been based in the Netherlands, I think, for the last 30 years, if not more. And she's head of the urban design department of the new town of Almere in Netherlands. She has a lot of design experience. She brings in a lot of design experience and also understanding of cities of the emerging economies. To her right on the screen, you have Claudio Oscioli. There is junior behind his name, but there's nothing junior about him. He's very senior, really, in every way, the amount of experience he has. His experience is so broad in advising and in being consultant to so many different organizations around the world that I often have difficulty explaining. But he's originally from Brazil. He's an architect planner based in the Netherlands, but actually half the time he's on an assignment in some other part of the world, which could be totally different continents. So he is I think at this moment he's based in Berlin. Is that right, Claudio? Bonn. He's based in Bonn. Yeah.
Bonn.
Bonn. Okay. Okay. So Claudio has also a lot of experience, I think, writing research things besides being a designer, but also, I think, judging research papers. Then you have Anita Patil Deshmukh to the left at the bottom. Unfortunately, she's not able to attend the program today. However, she did judge the shortlisted and she will judge the final ones because we are recording this session, which means that the recording will be ready for the jury members to preview within a week again, and then we will spend some time deliberating among ourselves to decide who should get the awards. Anita Patil has a totally different background than the three of us. She's a doctor by profession, then went into public health. She was teaching at the faculty at Chicago University for some time, but decided to come back to India and head an NGO called Pukar, which is in Mumbai, which is doing some very creditable work related to public health issues and the minorities in cities. She has herself written a lot of research projects, but also undertaken those projects actually on ground with the help of some of the staff members of Pukar, but more importantly, actually, a lot of the disenfranchised, they try to help. So they have these barefoot researchers who they set in, and a lot of universities from around the world are taking help of Pukar to actually undertake some research projects where these young boys and girls from backgrounds where they themselves haven't had enough education are able to help set up these research projects. So Anita is there for that. My background is I'm an urban designer, urban planner, and an architect. And with a lot of experience in the Netherlands and in India on large projects, we have worked on multidisciplinary projects. So that is my background, and I think the four of us together have a reasonably broad idea of what is happening around the world. However, we all are open to new ideas all the time, so we look forward to your presentations. Before you start, let me just tell you something simple, a technical issue. Basically, each of you gets 8 minutes to present his or her thesis. After 8 minutes, we will stop it. 1 minute prior to reaching your 8 minutes, you'll get a warning, and then we'll stop. But there's a clock on the computer which shows you on the screen, which shows you that your time is. So make sure your presentation finishes in 8 minutes. After that, we have 7 more minutes for the jury members to ask you questions, which you can answer. And at the end of it, we might have some grace period in which I would like to particularly ask a question about the follow-up program, which may happen if you get an award. So we would like to have a couple of minutes at the end for that. That is let's say the time frame within which we have to operate. And I think all I'll say is all the best to all of you. And thank you for being here. We look forward to your presentations. So the first, Afaq. Yes, the first presentation is Anuja Netalkar. May I invite you, Anuja, from RV College of Architecture in India. I think it's in Bangalore. And she has done a master's course in urban design, but the rest I'll leave it for her to present.
Hello everyone, my name is Anuja Netalkar and I will be presenting my thesis titled Regeneration of Wastegate to Create Healthy Work and Living Conditions with the help of closed loop system in the city, that is case of informal waste pickers in Nayandahalli, Bangalore. So the content of my thesis are as follows. They are divided into 6 chapters consisting of thesis project, theoretical rationale, analysis and findings, design precedent analysis, a photo essay of Nayandahalli, and finally the urban design strategies and design demonstration. Yeah, I would like to start by defining what a closed loop system is. So a closed loop system or a concept is nothing but where a waste of one source becomes a product or a material for the other source. So presently our cities consume about 60 to 80% of natural resources and produce around 50% of global waste, thus disturbing the natural ecosystem. And also it requires large areas for waste management, resulting in wastegate or landfills. So present city model is functions on a linear model where we produce, consume, and then dispose it off. But what if the same city can be converted into a closed loop system where whatever we produce, consume, instead of disposing it off, we can reverse it back and recycle it. So the diagrams to the right represent show differences between linear and circular cities. So in linear cities, we consume resources and create waste and pollution at a higher rate. But when compared to circular cities, there is a reduction in pollution where we can recycle and reuse the waste which we produce. So coming to my thesis project, so the hypothesis would be the closed loop concept can be seen as a precondition for achieving healthy cities. And the research questions are as follows. The first question is, how can cities and people living in it maintain the socio-ecological connect with nature by adopting the closed loop system? The second question is, how can the waste and the wastegate generated from it can become a new resource, contributing to the city and people living in it, and not create a negative imaginary in people's mind? And the third question is, how recycling of plastic waste can be adopted as a closed loop approach in the city, taking into consideration the people and the processes involved in it. So the limitations of my study are, the study area is limited to Nayandahalli, in which Nayandahalli will be a prototype, and the same concept can be used for other regions or areas in the city. And the study will focus on plastic waste and its processes only. So the thesis intent is to examine challenges in the process of recycling and understanding the processes involved in plastic waste recycling, and also how healthy work and living conditions can be provided to the informal waste pickers by applying closed loop strategy. So coming to the origin of closed loops concept. So closed loop concept was emerged from the concept of circular economy. So circular economy was developed in 1966 by Balding by producing an economic model. So, taking into consideration his ideas, similar concepts emerged, such as biomimicry, cradle to cradle, industrial ecology, and urban metabolism, to name a few. And similarly, there were certain countries which took initiative for the implementation of circular economy, such as Japan, Germany, Switzerland, and China. And also in Amsterdam, there was initiative taken to cover this theme under the Smart City project. But the major drawback of this was that the people or the human factor was not being included in this concept. Then I would like to explain the diagram to the top right. So according to Cedric Price, today's city is like a scrambled egg where nothing is recycled or goes in a circular system, but it is a linear system. But what if smaller circular loops are being created within smaller regions of the city, and they combining can form a larger loop as an end, contributing to the city as a whole. Then for my study, I analyzed two case studies. The first one was a repair project where they identified peri-urban regions which were categorized as the wastegapes, and they tried to regenerate those areas by studying the material such as the plastic waste, like how much amount of is being consumed and how much of it is actually being recycled or reproduced. And also my main aim was to understand the strategies which were being used in this case study. And coming to the wastegate categorization according to the case study, it is as follows: that is degraded land, degraded water and connected areas, then declining fields, and the settlements and the buildings which are in crisis, and operational infrastructure of waste and other infrastructure which can be categorized as wastegapes. Then my second case study was R-Urban, which is a participatory strategy for development practices and networks for local resilience. So in this case study, they tried to achieve certain loops or networks which consisted of mobility, then the water loop, the urban greens, and the people's loop, together forming a closed loop system. And also to add one more, that is the energy loop, and how the material recycled were actually being used by the community and the city on a larger scale. Then my argument is that though the concept of closed loop system has emerged in certain countries and cities, still it lacks in spatial planning and policy development because of the limited idea available on that. And also there are minimum guidelines available, and different scales of analysis and different stakeholders are rarely being integrated in the processes of closed loop system. Yeah. Then analysis of the plastic waste production in the country, that is in India. So there are different cities which produce major plastic waste, and one among them is Bangalore. Yeah, then coming to the statistics of Bangalore. So the plastic waste production is Bangalore is almost 30% of the total municipal solid waste. And also, yeah, these are the types of plastic waste and the processes involved in how plastic waste is being collected and finally sent for recycling. Then coming to the informal waste pickers, since Bangalore is a metropolitan city, so there are certain job opportunities, but some of them prefer using informal working environment, and one among them are the informal waste pickers. So informal waste pickers, though they contribute to the environment, they are being neglected by the society and the authorities as a whole, and they
Afak, if I speak now, can the other participants also listen to me? Yes. So let me first address just one thing to all participants. You noticed in case of Anuja that she took more than 5 minutes just to first tell the background, and she wasn't coming down to the case actually, which is solving. So I'm just requesting everybody to make sure that the preamble is not that long. It's your final thesis which gets much of the 8 minutes. And because this is very unfortunate, I'd like to give Anuja another 2 minutes to explain her case because she has hardly started on her project. So I'm just taking the initiative to let her have another 2 minutes to explain the case. Is it okay, Claudio and Liesl?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, please. Anuja, 2 more minutes. Just carry on. But
Thank you, sir.
all the other participants, please stick to your time and go down to the case. Don't do the preamble that long. We know
Yes,
what
sir.
you're trying to solve. We want the solution.
Yeah, and coming to Bangalore, there is one such cluster called Nayandahalli, which takes up initiative in recycling plastic waste, and majority of the informal waste pickers stay here. And coming to Nayandahalli, it is one of the strategic location where recycling takes place. And also going directly to the diagrams, Nayandahalli is densely populated area, and 50% of it consists of industrial land use, while 50% consists of residential land use, and it hardly consists of any green spaces, followed by commercial and public areas. Yeah. Then based on the analysis, I tried to develop a wastegate map, which shows that the existing, since majority of the industries are located near the railway lines, the railway line itself is becoming a wastegate because the industries face, the backyard of the industries face the railway lines, and the high tension lines have been used by the informal waste pickers, where they live and work there itself. But though it is against the guidelines, and coming to the BBMP dump site, it is also a wastegate, but it can add into the model which I'm proposing. Yeah. Then this is the Bangalore's material loop, the amount of waste being collected and how much of it comes to Nayandahalli on a larger scale. Yeah. Then apart from the waste from Bangalore, other cities also contribute, like Tumkur, Nelamangala, where the source has been brought to Nayandahalli. And yeah, based on that, I tried to categorize 6 different categories of plastic waste and their typologies. So I'll brief one by one. So the first category is the milk packets and the plastic carry bags. So around 1.5 to 2 tons is being collected, while 1 ton is being sent on daily basis. So the process is collecting milk packets, then it is washed, converted into powder form, then it is made.
I missed up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sort of wondering how to, Claudio and Liesl, can I give you the question, or can I ask Anuja first to put, there is one aerial drawing you have, which is your design,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So why don't you project that first?
Yes, sir. So these were the proposals which I came up with
Yeah,
based
I
on
know. Yeah. So if there is one drawing which sort of says something about your.
Yes, sir. The closed
Okay.
loop you're speaking about.
Okay, fine. So Claudio, Liesl, would you like to ask any question? If you.
Liesl, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Obviously, we didn't manage to see everything, but of course, we went through your thesis. What wasn't clear for me in your introduction is why you focused on plastic waste, and not on on another form of waste. Is there is there a reason why you sort of focused on this one topic?
Yeah, ma'am, the first reason was that in present city, there is major crisis of plastic waste, and there is question of how to handle it. And when I came up with Nayandahalli, the major industries which are located there focuses on recycling and converting plastic into material which have been sent to other industries. So which forms a product. So I thought combining both of them, like considering plastic waste and how that processes can be studied in Nayandahalli. So it was a bottom-up approach. Like I selected first the area, and then I came up with plastic waste as my major focus. And also, ma'am, due to the limited period of the research, I thought of selecting plastic waste and the processes involved in it.
Okay, may I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Yeah, is there time, Sham? I can't see the clock anymore.
There's a clock on the right side. Okay, so we still have 5 minutes or 4.5.
Okay. Okay, one more. From what you discovered in your research and in your of your design solutions, what do you think you would be able to be replicated in another city? You know, obviously some of the proposals that you have are very specific for the site that you chose, but which of your proposals do you think you would be able to replicate somewhere else?
Ma'am, the proposal would help in replicating the areas which are majorly being affected by not only plastic waste, but it can be considered for other type of waste as well, and how the people involved in recycling it and also the community as a whole can come up and help in closing the loop. Like Nayandahalli is one such case, but the same model or the prototype can be used in different areas of the city, and such smaller loops can make a whole larger loop in the city. Maybe in terms of production, like in term considering the plastic waste, I gave a proposal for this one. The dump site, BBMP dump site, which exists near Nayandahalli, around 2 to 3 kilometers. So here, my major intention was to convert the dump site into a production industry, which would produce energy and the product, that is the plastic brick. So since plastic, when it is made into a material, whole of it cannot be used to make a product. So the remaining part of it can be used to make the brick. So I have given one more proposal, that is providing housing for the informal waste pickers, because their present conditions where they live, they are not given proper services. And also they occupy the urban voids, say like the high tension lines for staying. So the housing which I'll be providing, so the same bricks which are produced in this manufacturing industry can be used for building the houses, that is G+1 structure, where the lower ground level can be used by the local people. There are the local workers, and the top floor can be used as dormitories by the migrant workers. So here the migrant workers are basically from Bihar. They have migrated to Bangalore for working in these recycling industries.
Okay. Claudio, do you have any question?
Yeah, I do have a comment and a question.
Yes.
The comment is, initially you have an incredible amount of visuals, very well done and very powerful. And unfortunately, it compromised, as Shyam said, you took a lot of time on explaining your analysis, which is very rich, because you provided a very interesting, in your study, the analysis of the whole solid waste management cycle in an urban area, which reminded me from the time I lived and worked in Egypt, where the Zabalin communities were actually responsible for 30% of the collection of the garbage in that huge metropolis. And one of the things that was not clear in your presentations were the center of sorting out and separating the plastic, which indeed gives an incredible economic value. And there is a value chain related to that. So I'm just highlighting this because that's the highlight of your study and your propositions. Now, having said that, in your proposal, because you bring the idea of circular economy and translate that into a design framework where collection, sorting out, and circulation. So, what is that makes your proposal feasible in terms of taking into account this, that you have a, in India, in many countries, the garbage is not segregated at the household, so you still need to actually separate the plastic out of the organic, for example, and metals, because that's the industry you're suggesting, which I agree with you that is a tremendous let's say, economic viability of recycling, but also the impact of plastic in our environment is incredibly high. So could you just briefly say what is that makes this feasible?
So firstly, I would like to say the site conditions which would make this happen. Like in Nandahalli, there are natural features also been affected by the amount of plastic waste, maybe in terms of poor collection or improper waste management. And the typologies, as I had categorized, the 6 different typologies. So those also, they operate with no formal structure, and also they are not being considered by the, say, the municipalities. Like they are not been given a proper identification or ID cards so that they can practice their occupation. So also many of them are considered as illegal. So they are afraid that the government might seize their properties. And coming to the structure, they are mostly temporary structures, and I can say 1 in 2 are owned by the people, the owner, and they work on rental basis. So, since Nandahalli has seen major infrastructure projects such as the flyovers, the metro lines, and the railway lines, but since these industries are present there, due to lack of storage spaces, they use the areas such as the railway line or the flyover, the area below the flyover, as their storage spaces. So if these industries are given, such as now at presently, the workers stay there itself and work there itself. So what if they are given separate housing where they can only stay and enjoy?
I'm sorry, I have to end this because I think the extra time we are giving you will have to go from somebody else's time at the end, and I don't think that will be fair. So thank you so much, Anuja. I'm sorry, Claudio.
It's okay.
I had to break that.
It's part of the game.
Yes, part of the game. So I'm going to, I think we'll go to the next candidate. And that is, I'm going to announce Kirisha Sethi from In Shams University in Egypt. And In Shams University, I must say, has been participating right from the beginning in the DAIDA Awards and has generally always managed to get 1 or 2 people shortlisted every year. So again, this year, so congratulations in any case to your mentors, because they are obviously very serious about it. I think Professor Salim is the name I have seen more often, and Dr. Astrid Lay also from University of Stuttgart, with whom you collaborate. So Girisha, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, sir. Good afternoon for everybody joining from India, and good morning to the others from the West. I'm Girisha Sethi. I was a dual degree master student at the University of Stuttgart and Ain Shams University in Egypt. My master's thesis is titled Who's Right, Whose City? Conflicting Claims and Contestations Around the Right to the City concept, with focus on informal settlements in the city of Delhi in India. My thesis is centered around the concept of right to the city, which is closely linked to the awards theme this year, Cities for Minority. It tries to look at what the right to the city means really when it is implemented on ground. The concept has lately become a very popular concept, which is unfortunately more widely used than it is understood. So the problem arises when one starts to question how the understanding of the concept finds implementation, especially with focus on minorities in the city. And in my case, I look at economic minorities residing in informal settlements in metropolitan cities like Delhi. And the understanding of the implementation, unfortunately, remains sparse because we see right-based claims being confronted with degrees of contestations, political, spatial, and socio-psychological. In that context, my research tries to critically review the applicability of the right to the city concept on a metropolitan city of the scale of Delhi in India and see what are the conflicting claims and contestations that confront the right of informal settlements, specifically Jhuggi Jhopri settlements or JJ settlement, JJ clusters in Delhi. The word Jhuggi Jhopri literally translates to what can be understood as shanties in English. So for my thesis, I look at the two Jhuggi Jhopri or JJ clusters in Delhi that are on screen right now, which became my sites for empirical study. That is broadly the conceptual framework of my research. I try to adapt the framework of social justice to housing justice with its three dimensions of distributive, recognitional, and procedural justice to the larger system within which informal cities operate in the city. So I look at the top-down structure of policy and planning and see what kind of distributive housing justice can be interpreted for the informal residents in the informal settlements. I also then look at the bottom-up dynamics emerging in the city in today's time from social movements that are trying to create participatory planning by working closely with the residents. I got lucky that the time during which I did my research, the Main Bhi Delhi campaign was active because the master plan of Delhi was under revision. So I could collect primary data on the participatory dynamics and look at them critically for the procedural dimension of justice. The core of my research was at talking to people both of informal settlements and the formal colonies near the informal settlement to understand the socio-psychological associations, the perceptions people hold in their minds for the different JJ clusters around them, and look at that for the recognitional dimension of justice. This was verified by an understanding of an assessment of right to adequate housing in the two JJ clusters that I selected to find the relationship between the perceptions and the status of adequate housing in these settlements. All of these were together synthesized to look at the different conflicts, contradictions, and contestation that arrive from all of these varied mechanisms and varied stakeholders to question what the right to the city really means for the minorities living in JJ clusters. Without going into detail, that's broadly the methodology of my research. I broke it down into the research questions that are visible on the screen. First, looking at the frameworks of planning and policy through government documents, looking at the emerging participatory dynamics through case studies that from primary data collection, focusing on various perceptions by focus group discussions and semi-structured interview with the residents, and then through observations and a spatial assessment, looking at the status of adequacy in the housing, finally synthesizing that for housing justice and right to the city to see what it really means, how it fares for the given clusters that I focus on, and what are the contradictions or contestations therein. The first part of my research was a policy historic tracing. So I looked at policies since the independence of the country, both at a state level and a city level, to see the certain patterns in the provision. It helped me see that at a state level, the provision and the distributive dimension of justice stays compromised because, one, the taxonomy used to define different settlements in the city themselves reproduce certain hierarchies. The very fact JJ clusters are called Jhugi Chopri clusters, even after they're allowed to exist without the fear of eviction, reinforces their minority. Secondly, an observation was that through the years, through the different provisions, there's always been a shortage of affordable housing in city, and there's been a big gap between the demand and supply of affordable housing from the government's end, despite its claim to want to fulfill that promise. This was rooted in the fact that financial allocation for JJ clusters remained deprioritized, and private players shied away from taking up the project of creating housing for the low-income groups. My second phase was to look at participatory dynamics. Those were the 3 case studies of bottom-up social movements that I looked at. The analysis also showed that despite best efforts to address the needs of the minorities, the gap between what the social organizations were trying to do on the ground and the provisions and the decisions that were taken at the top level, the gap between the two remained unbridged despite trying to mobilize the right of the minorities. The efforts that were put by the social practitioners remained scattered and piecemeal, given there was little interagency communication. And in that sense, the larger procedures of city planning and how the minorities are included within it were not really addressed and remain uninformed. The third aspect were the interviews, where I talked to first the property owning residents living very close to the selected JJ clusters to understand what were their perceptions about the settlements. And then I talked to the residents of the JJ clusters themselves on how they feel about the associations that were linked to them. It also showed that the perception that was shared were closely linked to my assessment of the different adequacy of housing in the different standards of adequacy of housing in the settlement. It showed that the residents of formal settlement expressed an upper hand in their right to the city, and this ended up further stigmatizing the informal settlements, which were seen as an eyesore and as associated with crime and illegality. Finally, putting it together, I could tell that the residents of JJ cluster were denied distributive justice from the state's end, recognition of justice from other actors in the city, and attempts to uphold the procedural justice for them remain localized. This gave them little agency to legitimize their right to the city in ways they could afford. In conclusion, it had me see when at one end...
No, just give her another minute, please.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm going to quickly wrap up. So on one end, where there were talks of ideals of inclusion, socialist equality, and international rights-based guidelines to reduce housing injustice and inequality. And on the other hand, we see in reality land economics being guided by market development visions of the government faced in beautification, entitlements, and residency in the city defined by ownership, and the contestation shared by residents, again, pollution causing squatters. In that context, the concept of right to the city becomes very hard to be interpreted and implemented. I propose that this conflict and contestation needs to be met with consensus and compromise. And at the 3 levels of the justice, there is need for social and practical modes of consolidating the right, upholding equal access to the resources that the city has to follow, and allowing the JJ clusters an equal say in the procedures that shape the city. My final recommendations were to look at the social function of land, break down the right to the city into more tangible rights that are easy to interpret and easy to implement, like right to adequate housing, right to secure tenure, right to urban citizenship, and promote access to financial structures for them to upgrade their living condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Girisha. Claudio, I'm sure you will have some question to ask on this, or not?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. You nearly got everything in the 8 minutes, so congrats for the efforts to make. I think this is a tip for the following presentations. A comment and a question. And I'm quite happy to see the topic you chose, because I was the coordinator of the UN Housing Rights Program for a number of years when I was in UN Habitat. And you correctly raised the issue of adequate housing and how this could provide a strategy for JJ residents to actually claim their right to the city in the way you conceptualize. The question is, within the context of India and particularly Delhi, where you dig into the analysis, how do you see your strategy in order to claim, as illustrated here, and the obstacles that perhaps will prevent you to realize what you propose in your thesis?
Okay, thank you for your comment and your question. To put it briefly, I see two large obstacles or barriers. One is affordability. The JJ clusters and all the other low-income groups that reside in different degrees of informality in the city, in the villages within the city or other unauthorized colonies, find it hard to afford the formal, legally recognized, legitimate housing in the city, given the shooting land prices and shooting real estate. And the other big obstacle is the current condition of JJ clusters, which do provide an affordable option to all the migrants, to all the people coming to the city who can't afford to live in the formal market, but the poor living conditions. So addressing the two together would be an important step moving forward. That is also what I mean when I say the social function of land. It is important to allocate certain land in the city, and that's something that only the state can do, which is out of the market, which is out of the real estate dynamics, to look at the social function of housing in the city, which is affordable for low-income groups. So that is one. The other is the current existing. There are 750 plus JJ clusters only in the city of Delhi, which have been since 2015 recognized as legitimate and provided certain security of tenure, not land titles, but certain security to protect them from evictions. But the living conditions remain terribly poor. And in that sense, I think there is a lack of innovative financial models where the public and the private can collaborate, not to raise it to ground and build townships afresh, which is what has been happening in many Indian cities, but to come up with more innovative ways to incrementally improve the living conditions of the JJ clusters. Because my research brought me to the point that most of the lack of recognition that the residents receive from other residents in the city as legitimate city dwellers had to be attributed to their poor living condition. They were looked down upon, and they were not allowed to participate in the city fully, purely because they lived in poor conditions. So maybe innovative financial and partnership model to improve their living conditions without relocating them to the outskirts of the city. Sorry, that was too long.
Okay, thank you. Liesl, do you have any question? Or Girisha? I'm sure Anita would have had a question, but she's not here. But that's okay. So we'll...
No, I don't have a specific question. I found the presentation very clear, very concise, to the point. So yes, thank you for that.
Okay, I have a question and a comment and a question. It's I don't know how, but I'd like you to try to answer this. I think very well put. The way you have done it, Girisha. But if I was living in a JJ cluster, and if I were to read your report, I would be, to say the least, extremely disappointed that in spite of the bottom-up actions which are being taken by groups of different groups, the government or the powers that be are not actually doing too much with it. and I would be extremely disappointed. Now, my point is, the problem you have state is such a major one, such a big one. How does one keep one's spirits high under such conditions? So I liked a couple of these slogans which you had, which says "Kaun hai master, kya hai plan." You know, lovely, very well put. Some of these.
But that's not my line. I
No,
would
no,
admit.
I know it isn't. But I mean, I can imagine that such slogans help energize people to take part in actions. Okay, because it makes things clear. So for Claudia and Liesel, who do not know Hindi, "Kaun hai master" means it's actually playing on the master plan word master plan. Instead of you say who is the master? Master is the chief or the boss. And what is a plan? That's what they're saying in Hindi then, instead of putting a slogan like that. So my point is, you have given a couple of examples of art installations or something to keep the spirits high. You know, because I think this major problem is going to last for decades, and it's, you know, and we have to keep on doing things. But what can you do if we were to give you a follow-up award? What could you do for that 5,000 euros, which would still keep these people there, or some of them, their spirits a little high to keep on participating?
Okay, yes, thank you so much. I wouldn't be too critical or dismissive to say that any things that are happening on the ground through the social movements do not make a difference. I would admit they help people first be aware of what right to demand, to articulate their needs and see how they fit into existing legal frameworks. Also, it helps them project their living conditions to other parts of the city. In fact, that is also what I hope to leverage in my follow-up plan. The gap I wish to fill is the gap between bottom-up social movement and social participatory dynamics and the decision-making that is happening at the state's end. And that is one engagement I hope to fulfill through the follow-up plan, where I want to do a social assessment of what one particular JJ cluster lacks and what the needs of the community are, communicate that through social practice, through social art installation, where the community gets to, come together and articulate their needs and communicate that to the authorities. But yes, I think there's a long way to go, as it's a complex problem. I also wouldn't say the state is making no attempts to address it, but given the complexity of it and largely the complexity of land in the capital city of a country of the scale of India, I think it would take a long while to, articulate a framework that is both viable for the state financially and affordable for the residents of the city.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation, Nisha.
Thank you so much.
Yes. We will go now to the next participant, and that is Himanshu Satwi of CEPT University, India, and his program. He's from the program of Masters in Urban Infrastructure, and with a very interesting study on the residents of Dal Lake. So, Himanshu, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Himanshu, and the title of my project is Accelerating the Climate Resilient Sanitation. So, this is the case of Dal Dwellers, Srinagar. It's a floating community which is like resided in the city of Srinagar in northern parts of India. So this is just a city profile to just understand the demographics. This city has a population of around 11.27, And so, since my topic is regarding WASH, I would like to directly highlight the major factors which are contributing towards the research. So here, the interesting number that shows is 33%. Only 33% of the area covered by sewage network. Uh, the people of the Dal has only 33% of the area covered by sewage network, the whole city. And so my research lies where where does this 67% of the on-site sanitation practice is going on. So just to give an context, Srinagar is vulnerable. Srinagar is vulnerable to the river floods and potentially damaging, life-threatening river floods at least once in next 10 years. So this is a recent Google image of 2014 where massive flooding had happened, and if we look at the frequency of events in last 60 years, 9 times Srinagar has been faced this calamity of flooding. Uh, and so, looking at Srinagar's vulnerability towards flooding, around 49% of the households are at the risk of flooding. And so my study is more towards the core city where these uh, dwell. And so just to give an image of who are Dal dwellers, these are the settlements who have a symbiotic relation of community and water. They are close to sanitation. They are flood hazard. They also have a source of livelihood since they're doing their farming, fishing. Everything is happening over there. Social and culture. Which is an important factor which goes, and the tourism, since it is known as the one of the beautiful heaven in the world. So, the aim of my research is to analyze the impact of climate change impact, that is flooding, the impact of flooding on sanitation in vulnerable Dal dwellers of Srinagar. So, my objectives were to assess the climate risk on sanitation, where I understood the relation of climate change and sanitation, then understanding the vulnerability, the people who are marginalized and vulnerable. What are the factors which are leading to unsafe sanitation, environment, and unhygienic practices? And then in the end giving a climate resilient framework and strategies for sanitation. So this was my 4 month intensive research program which was done on site. We started with understanding the relation of climate change and wash. After doing secondary analysis, I went to the site. First site visit where I did visual documentation, where I cleared my scope, and after that again I came back and understood the relation between the Dal dwellers and the water, their daily activities, understood their housing typologies, and documented their sanitation practices. This was done by another site visit where 28 kilometers of reckonance survey was done by there's a term called shikara, which they called it's a raft which they used to travel within the islands of the Dal. So that was done by me. 122 household surveys were carried out. Then later coming back, I came and we analyzed the data. We understood the best practices which are going on the life over water, and then suggested some climate resilience strategies. Later, it was again taken to the stakeholders for discussion, like how it could be it could be brought onto the ground. Just to give a brief context, who are these Dal dwellers? They are mostly their social structure consists of uh, uh, three uh, three types. One are the farming people, the people who are doing farming. They are the zamindars, the houseboat owners, who are the hanjis, they call them, and the fishermen, who are the Sunnis. So these are the islands which I was talking about, which where they reside on, and it takes around 20 years for them to raise one island over water. So if you look at the main image, the raised dams, which is dams means a floating island. So this is an matured island where they are doing the farming right now and have their housing typology. So the just to bring the story in picture, the story of Dal dwellers close to water, no sanitation, plus flood vulnerable. So just to give a brief, it's a population of 6,000 people with 24 square kilometer of area. The community of farmers, fishermen, and artisans. Um, and since 18th century, we can see how the settlements have rise and people are just reclaiming the land and without any proper sanitation and hygiene in place. The Dal Lake is divided into five parts, five main basins, and one of the basin is where the adult wellness lies. So this is just the scope and the survey footprint which I tried to do. So the main thing which I wanted to analyze from these surveys and site visit was to understand the linkage of housing and sanitation. So I tried to map the different typologies with respect to sanitation and flooding, and then understood the sanitation system, the whole sanitation value chain, from the accessibility point of view to the convenience to the convenience system, and also about understanding the relation of sanitation and the climate hazard during times of flood. So, just to understand, these were the three different typologies which were understood: kacha houses, and as per that, through the sanitation value chain, what are the issues which were identified? For example, access to sanitation in this type of kacha houses was like there is no interface. You can see that it's a lone standing sanitation interface where there is no conveyance facility, no containment facility, and it is impacting the water quality, creating unhygienic environment and health issues. So there is this nexus of water and sanitation which is at cost, and and when we look at the impact during the flood, yeah. Just to such typologies were identified. Another typology one was stilt houses. Another typology was houseboats. And then also with respect to climate change, the 122 surveys were later put into analysis, and it was understood that what are the problems which are leading to the access to sanitation and the functionality, and that was like difficult route towards sanitation facility and either undesirable or inaccessible sanitation facility during floods. It was also a basic that around 44% of the houses use single pit toilets and experience backflow of fecal sludge, which is again creating an fecal contamination. 10 households open defecate during flooding. So we need something. We need some infrastructure which gives a solution for this. So as per my analysis and the survey, 78% of the Dal dwellers lack access to sanitation during flooding. Same thing, 39% of the households have no containment facility. That is, the toilets are hanging and the. Yeah. Can I just move to my project? Just the follow-up one, which is coming.
Himanshu, I'm going to give you one more minute because you haven't told
Yeah.
us what you can do with the problem,
Yeah,
right?
so I summarized my problems and then I came up with a project drains, that is the resilience and access to improve non-sewer sanitation, which was about strengthening access to sanitation services. This was a project, four-step project for 5 years with two pilots for that is Bool and Mulpots, which was about access to sanitation and contentment. So just to understand what was Bull, the project Bull. It's a toilet facility which will be later converted into a wholesome toilet facility. Those spots were identified, those locations were identified. There were parameters which were identified, like the proximity, the facility accessible, the strategic location, their funding, stakeholder mapping was done into consideration. The silence features and the costing was removed, the financial, how the funds will be taken into picture. And just to give an image, this was a visualization of the pilot goal. This is the visualization which I am giving. Later, containment facility. This is the before image, and after we give the containment facility, these are the containment facility technology implement of microbial biofilm processes, which I'm trying to input here. So this can also be given in terms of containment. So like this, with the we can end with conveyance where we give a floating desludging shikaras and floating honeysuckers, and then emptying provision of co-treatment facility in the existing system. So this covers the whole sanitation value chain. That's it. This is my research. So this is the quote that is given by Amit Purus. Gar Firdos Bari Rahman Hamiyas to Hamiyas. So that means there's one beauty in the world that lies in Srinagar. And I hope with this project we conserve our ecology and the island dwellers. the minorities. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Himanshu.
Thank you.
Liesel and Claudio. Liesel, would you like to have a jab at a question?
Yes, yes. Thank you for the presentation. Very graphically, I found it a very pleasing presentation. And also clear. It's a pity that we didn't have enough time to go through it all. Yeah, you know, that you didn't have enough time to go through everything. I was just out of interest, in your third phase, you said that you had focused group discussions again. You know,
Yeah.
you had them in the first phase and then again in the third phase. Did you in the third phase, when you had the group discussions, tell people what your proposals were? And what was their reaction?
Yeah, so after the proposal was taken back to the site, the people were really happy with the provision of access to sanitation. They really wanted something that is floating on the island, and so that the number which I was showing, 4 in 10 households is doing open defecation there. So they were really happy with this pilot project of Gool, and it was also taken to the authority, Srinagar, city corporation, and the smart city, and they were also ready to fund it. So for that, we did this mapping of stakeholder mapping, where influence level versus level of interest was mapped.
Okay. Claudio, do you have a question? Or
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Again, you compromise your proposal for the project drains by spending a lot of time on sharing with us your analysis and the linkage between the flooding and the impact on Dow dwellers. The question I have is, again, when you see the implementation aspects of your proposal, you spoke of the dwellers themselves. Do you have, how do you see this from the point of view of residents? How do you see this implementable, given that, you know, the climate change is here to, I mean, the climate change impact is here to stay for a while until we really do something that diminish the frequency and strength of the events that we see happening more and more. So I'm just thinking here while you were presenting, so how do I make this happen, that when the river goes up and the event comes back again, that I can ensure that the whole sanitation system remains intact and people can actually improve their access to sanitation, because I don't know what's the level of open air defecation there in among the Dal residents, but I know in some areas of India it's quite high. So how do you see that?
Yeah. I would like to answer it in two parts. One is like I'm trying to provide a wait. I'm trying to give a solution like from access to containment to conveyance to treatment. So in terms of access to sanitation, we also people have toilet, but they are defecating. They have hanging toilets. They are defecating. So if we provide them containment, that problem is solved. So that is one solution I'm trying to give. People really want that solution. And again, the conveyance which I was talking about, desludging, which is not happening. If that is in place, the whole sanitation value chain comes into place. And the pilot which I'm talking about, the goal, it's a feature. It's a kind of project uh, which has salient features like it will be used during the times of flood, where people can come at as a rescue point. It will act also as a rescue point, act as a community point where people can stay at least for a day or two. So if I give that to, if we have one such goal for one hamlet, it will really create an impact in terms of providing that resilience to those communities.
Can I ask you one question, Himanshu? When you say one gul, you mean, so this is one houseboat with 4
Yeah,
toilet
one goal.
facilities in it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I mean, just not letting them defecate in the water itself doesn't solve, because you have to desludge and convey it, etc., because otherwise the whole thing will be put
Yeah.
into water. But tell me one thing, how many residents will something like this serve? When you say a hamlet, you said, I mean, what are we talking about?
So when I'm talking about hamlet, there are around 120 to 130 hamlets. It's a huge area. One
Okay.
hamlet consists of around 20 to 40 households.
Okay.
It's a
Fine.
community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this
And
is also one.
and do you think the people, you see, do the people who actually live there, do they see it as a problem?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. Because it has created such a havoc between them after 2014 that they like everyone is trying to move out of that place, but since their economic activities are in that place, they are not able to move out from their home.
Okay.
So that's an impacting. And these Dal dwellers have a history since 17th century. They are residing there from 17th century.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Otherwise, I think it was good. So, and we still have 9 seconds, but that's fine. We can use the time to go to the next person, and that is
Thank you.
that is Merna Labib, also from Ain Shams University in Egypt, and she'll talk about children. She's doing a Master's of Science in Integrated Urbanism and Sustainable Design. Merna, you're welcome.
Hello. Thank Hello, I'm Merna. And my thesis topic is the impact of streets' physical characteristics on children's independent mobility as a case study from New Cairo, Egypt. So a quick background about my topic is that our streets and public spaces, next please, the children experience their first notion of independence, where it can develop their cognitive and social skills. So the UNICEF made this study in the developing countries in Africa, and they asked children what do they think of their cities. And for example, here, as you can see, in safety and protection, 65% of the children said that they don't feel safe in their cities. So next, please. They made this diagram of all the constraints that the children can face in their built environment that can affect their independent mobility. So what is children's independent mobility? It's basically if a child can move freely, independently, without a guardian safely in his or her neighborhood. So what is the importance, next please, of the CIM? Basically, it helps the children to be more involved. It enhances their problem solving and investigation skills. It creates an independent human and increase their knowledge and navigational skills. So my research problem is that children's development is, next please, affected by their inability to interact fully with the urban spaces as the neighborhood and its streets' physical characteristics do not focus on children as a priority. So my research aim is to identify the impact of these characteristics on CIM and go further with investigating the quality of travel in the streets, detecting the influential physical elements, and explore the factors that can affect the street's quality for children. My research question would be, what are the street's physical characteristics that would impact CIM, and what's the relation between those characteristics and the frequency that a child can move independently, and how those characteristics affects the choice of a child in his or her travel journey. So my framework starts with, next please, the design guidelines for the CIM, and identifying the indicators that impact the CIM, from the parent's license, the range that they can travel, time, destination, and so on. Identify how a proper street should be for a child to be safe, and the impact of these characteristics. My methodology is divided into 2 phases. First phase is to collect data and sample the results according to the participants' age, gender, and socioeconomic class. And my phase 2 is to identify the most used streets collected from the collected data in phase 1, and start the observation phase. And lastly, to start the analysis to understand the perception of the children and their parents of their neighborhood, and identify the frequency of CIM of the children. So in literature review, it is declared that from 7, next please, from 7 to 13 years old is the age that a child can start walking, cycling, and taking public transportation on their own. So the UNICEF created this chart defining the age range with the travel range and the facilities needed within the street and neighborhood, so that child can travel independently. And also the NACTU, next please, identified the street's characteristics that should be in a proper street for a child to move independently, like seating and transit stops, sidewalks, pedestrian crossing, amenities like lighting and trash cans. So at the end, the impact of the physical characteristics, next please, is that any deprivation of the area traveled by a child, starting from the transportation infrastructure, the roads to access, the traffic density, and the vehicle speed, can enhance or hinder the level of safety perceived by the parent or the child. So my scope of study is to focus on the children from 7 to 13 years old. Next, please. And the socioeconomic status from low to mid-income families, and the study area to be focused on the new generation cities in Egypt, basically because they are designed to attract away the people from the center, attract the people away from the center to with more developed opportunities, and it has a balance between the residential areas and the service proximity. Next. So my case study is in New Cairo settlement, as it has shown success as a new city than other generation cities. And my specific area is divided to 11 clusters, and it's one of the first districts to be established in New Cairo, which introduce a stable, vibrant neighborhood for the study. So the next slide is just an analysis of the characteristics of my neighborhood. So to identify where are the schools and the main streets. And next is the data collection. It starts with the taking permission. Next, please. Permission from the New Cairo Educational Administration. So I can approach children ethically to go through phase 1, which is divided to a drawing activity and map activity, for them to be able to explain how they travel in the streets, and the questionnaires that follows Hillman's questionnaire. Also, I added the place standard tool to measure the level of satisfaction of the children and their parents. And last is the observation of those streets traveled by children. The next 2 slides is a very quick sample of the data collected from the children. Can you go to slides, please? Again, please. And then all of these data I collected in one table. Next, please. In one table to be able to quantify the CIM frequency and divide them, next please, according to the age, gender, and the socioeconomical background of the family. So in the next slide, we can see that the highest CIM frequency are within the boys from the low-income families. Next, please. The gender of boys with the low-income families. And next, please. And this takes the end of the results of phase 1, and then the data collection of phase 2 starts with identifying the most used streets by children and go through a quick analysis of the traffic of these streets. And in the next slide, I go more in depth with the next, please, with the observations of each of those streets, and this is only one sample of one of the streets. Like we can see that there are some sidewalks that they're not continuous, the stray animals or any barriers that the children face on their daily basis. So at the end, the street's characteristics can impact CIM. Next, please. With two observations that the obstacle within the CIM range, which is supported by literature review like stranger danger or fear of stray animals. And second is the elements that can enhance the street's quality, supported by literature and the parents' recommendations, like you can see highlighted in red. Next, please. Also, there are variables that can affect the CIM frequency, like the demographics, the age, gender, or socioeconomic status. Also, the parents' perception from feeling safety, and if they think their child is still young. At the end, my conclusion is that there are specific elements, next please, that like darkness, physical barriers, and so on, we were found to have the highest impact in CIM frequency respectively, and green spaces, unlike other studies, it was shown that it had lower impact since the children have to travel that distance anyway. The street quality of the most used streets are the most crowded with more eyes on the street, and comes next after it, the second most used streets are those that scored better rates of the mentioned streets' physical characteristics. Next, please. So my follow-up project, I have 3 interventions that can be distributed along the whole neighborhood. Next, please.
Mara, I'll start the question. Thank you for presentation. I'll come with a question about your follow-up project in the Q&A. Okay. So
thank you.
I have thank you for your presentation. I have particularly and thank you for completing it in time. I have particularly followed it because together with Professor Bharne of University of Southern California, we have recently written a book called Streets for All, and it contains 50 examples of streets from around the world for all sorts of, to make them actually resilient and also accessible to all sorts of minorities. Might want to look that book up, it will help. But in any case, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll give the floor first to Claudio and Liesel, and then I'll come with my question at the end.
Sure, thank you.
Could we just go 2 slides back to where you have your sort of, your conclusions?
Yes.
Yeah, here. Okay. I don't have a question immediately. I still need to think. So if Claudia has something, then go ahead, Claudia.
Okay. Yeah, I like the issue of street, and Shyam has led also one publication on street, and I find it quite fascinating, the impact of streets in overall prosperity in city. And your entry point is the whole child-friendly or independent mobility and the role of streets. So the question is, in terms of design, I kind of miss some ideas about what is that would make street conducive to promote more safety or more use by children within their environment. Did you elaborate on that?
Yeah, this I elaborated in the follow-up project. Can we go, please? One more slide. Thank you. So I had these 3 interventions that can spread in some areas of the neighborhood or other neighborhoods that works the same way. And these interventions can change policies on local and regional and national level. Like, for example, the first intervention is having an interactive island. Can you go next, please? Like, this interactive island is just like a small contribution of the community to the children in one of the most used streets that they have to go daily through their lives, that they can feel included, and they can have a place where they can move safely through the streets, like from their houses to schools or any destination that they usually go through. Like most of the parents that gone through the questionnaire and the interview, they complained specifically about how wide the streets are and how the community or like the governmental decisions focus on like on the cars and the traffic, but then they leave the vulnerable groups and like children aside. So here I have a small proposal of having a place for the parking areas, space for the sidewalks, and a small interactive island for the children. And on the next slide, also a small intervention of just having the cross ways for children and the signs that children can like maneuver easily through the streets. Like there was this example by the NACTU that what don't we think about our design, our community's design from 95 centimeter. So this is also was one of the focuses. And the last intervention, next please, was just to include the play areas and clean play areas in gardens that already exists within their neighborhood. And all of these interventions, they will increase the resident satisfaction level and the children's sense of attachment to their community.
All right, thank you. I think you showed the combination between research and the design intervention to sort that out, and I want to commend you for linking your approach to the SDGs, which makes it quite actual and contemporary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, man, I have a question. Can you go back to the slide which shows that neighborhood?
Yeah, sure.
What is the size of that neighborhood?
The signs?
Size. So you have a scale there. No, just go back a little. I don't know.
Yeah, it's slide 12.
Yes, just hold this. So there's a scale here which says 500 meters. Is that right?
Yes, and the area of the total neighborhood is 3,200 meters, and basically it's 1,200 meters. Yeah, in width.
So how many people are living there?
Well, some of the places is like informal, like there is some governmental projects, so not all of the people living there are registered.
Okay. Now, why I'm asking this question is because I'm just trying to understand whether what you're trying to do is create a walkable neighborhood, right?
Exactly, yes.
Walkability for the children. So I'm just trying to understand the distances which they have to travel. So whether your definition of the neighborhood, which is obviously the neighborhood designed by the planning authorities.
Yes.
They make also a lot of mistakes. Like if you look at the road and the size of the road and you think of the climate in Egypt, you wonder how come somebody ever came with a design like that. Okay. So,
yes.
So I'm just trying to understand. It's more about that. And because you have suggested in your follow-up project, if there was a play field or something like that it would just be one play field in such a place with really
yes. Exactly. This is what not one proposal. Like I mentioned, that this is an intervention that can be repeated every couple of a range. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's clear to me. By the way, this is the book I'm talking about. I don't know.
I've gone through it. Yes.
Okay. So your university library might have it already, but it's worthwhile looking at. We have examples from all over. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Sean, is the time up? Is the time
no,
up?
No, you can. We can give a grace period, please.
Time for one question. I noticed in your conclusion or your conclusions that green spaces green spaces don't sort of contribute to higher mobility for children.
Yes.
That's sort of counterintuitive.
Yes, because like there are a lot of problems that the children face from point A to point B in their travel journeys, and the green spaces from all the elements that they had to rate rated the lowest. Cause and when I asked why, they were like, we have to go the distance anyway. So the most basic elements that they need are like not the street not to be dark, the stray animals that they can be visible, cause so they would feel a little bit safe to travel this distance.
Okay.
I guess that has something to do with the design and maintenance of the green space, because the green space was walkable and had still a feeling of gave us feeling of security. People would have children would have walked, because I think in Netherlands, if we create green spaces, we think, and it is used by children to walk across. Okay, because there's issue of security is not there. But I understand why Liesel is making that comment, and I understand. I can understand that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we are now taking a 10-minute break. Is that right? Okay. So Liesel, Claudio, we can take a 10-minute.
And very providential.
Yes.
See you in 10 minutes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Take
In 10 minutes time. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Resuming after a short break. I hope Claudio, Liesel, you are enjoying yourself, also listening to all this. Okay. You're on mute. Okay.
That's right.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, the next person we would like to invite is Malvika Suresh. She's from the School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal, and she's pursuing her degree in Master of Landscape Architecture. Malvika, please present your case.
Good afternoon. I'm Malvika Suresh, and my thesis topic is reimagining the cultural landscape of weavers community in Balaramapuram. Sorry, my screen is not moving. Just a second. Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Malvika, and my thesis topic is reimagining the cultural landscape of handloom weavers of the Shalia community in Balaramapuram. So my thesis aims to reinvent and revive the place identity of Balaramapuram weavers to promote the craft of handloom through a landscape design of the neighborhood, and thus creating a better living and work environment for the weavers, and thereby keeping this art alive for the generation to come. So these are the most ancient and the first GI tag the handloom center in Kerala, and these communities are brought by Maharaja in 1800s from Tamil Nadu. And also, according to the government report, we can see that there were 300 Chalia households in this cluster, and only 30 are actually engaging in weaving right now. Also, in the graph, you can see these are the major handloom centers in Kerala. Among them, Trivandrum was the highest till 2012. But in this graph from 2015 to 17, we can see the vast decline. So that is the current situation. Also, it is located only 18 kilometers away from the Trivandrum International Airport, thereby facilitating the cultural tourism. So this is a historical map evolution showing from 1840 to 2023 with a linear trend, like the population is growing in a linear trend. We can see the weaving workspace got converted into abandoned building structures, and they got separated by the fences in the backyard. And so this is two illustrations depicting the past scenario and the present scenario. Here you can see the traditional houses with the sharing common walls reflect the culture and the occupation. So similarly, you can see now the change in house forms and the function. Similarly, earlier the Pongal was celebrated in front of the temple. Now it got celebrated in front of the houses. Also, once the street was really active with the weaving activities, due to the heavy traffic and lack of shading trees and all, the sizing process got completely vanished. So modern lifestyle reduced the street interaction, impacting the community's social value. Also, we can see the change in streetscape and function. Like this is a section taken through the road connecting to the backyard. You can see in the earlier section that once it was very active, also with the Nul Chavata activity, one of the weaving process. But right now this got cut by the fences, so which utterly damaged the quality of that area. And now coming to the base map, the first street, that is a single street. Its character is like it's coming from commercial to residential leading to the temple area. And the second street, that is a double street. It's having the residential area on either side. And the in between, there are three temples followed by an auditorium, library, cultural spaces, working spaces, vacant plot, uh, Gita classes, etc. And the other two streets are completely residential areas. And coming to the vegetation map, we can see that very less vegetation is seen on either side of the street. And the building map, the most traditional building in the settlements are replaced by the new ones. Very few are only renovated in the old style. So it's very crucial to ensure that both the new and the older buildings should maintain the settlement character. It should be strictly enforced. And the red color highlighted areas, this one, are under the temple ownership. So which is also a potential space for connecting to the tourist network. And observing the building height map, it reveals that most of the structures are G and G+1, and with the temple featuring the Grand Gopuram as the tallest one. So in order to maintain the street character, the height restriction should be implemented. And coming to the cultural map, we can see that all the weaving activities are happening in the main streets itself. Also, the weaving activities are concentrated in the last two streets and the weaving activities in the double street. So we can propose an experiential trail and it should start from last to the first. And coming to the activity map, from this we can know that this is the most this is the double street. Double street is the most happening place in the entire stretch. And it highlights it's like a dynamic hub with three temple, library, Gita classes, weaving process happening, handloom centers, outlets, etc. So yet it is very much congested, like lacking the resting spaces beyond the residential verandas. Additionally, absence of shading trees also make the street interactions very challenging. So my vision is merging the concept of landscape and heritage together. That is reuniting the fragmented approach. So this will ensure the needs of local communities and their environment. So these will be achieved through this key 8 points: preservation of the cultural heritage, sustainable tourism, integration of the green spaces, natural features, promoting biodiversity, community involvement, conservation of the built heritage, legibility and accessibility. So this is my proposal. This is the transformation journey through the vibrant tapestry of Kerala's landscape, basically exploring the art and culture of weaving. So it is a unique experiential trail, not just about the product, but about the captivating process behind them. So this was the existing entry where people was not able to see the process. Actually, like every process was hidden from the people. So instead of this conventional process, I want to showcase and sell the fascinating process behind them, basically adding a new layer to the new layer of experience. So this starts with the first one as a trail entry. So it's a traditional Kerala style gateway surrounded by an urban structure, creating a visual focus. Further, it leads to a green corridor that is a vibrant pathway dominated by the lush greenery. Then further, it leads to the serene pose point, intermittent areas to connect with the nature and relax. Then it is leading to the seating areas where they could experience the landscape. Then finally, it is leading to the weaving windows, where it's an observation point for the first weaving activity without any disturbance. Then to the path anticipation, that creates a sense of curiosity about the unknown journey ahead. Then it is leading to the seventh one, that is interpretation center, where the locals will be explaining all the process and the importance and the significance of the handloom. And further leading to the eighth one, that is a street with the pre-weaving activity. where they could see all the activities, and from there 9 to the sizing activity, roadside display of sizing process for the visitors. And from there to the community forestry and farming, that is the 11th one, green and the yellow color marked. So there they could learn about the natural dye process and purchase the related product. And to the community stall, that is the 10th one, where the locals can sell their authentic Kerala food. So this can also be a source of income generation. Then finally leading to the celebratory plaza. It's actually a culmination point for the work, learning, relaxation, and shopping and celebration. Also, the abandoned buildings are converted into a workshop for the students. So thereby we can integrate the youth into a revival of this precious art. And now coming to the double street, I have focused this area. So here I transformed the double street from the combined building shed into a belt of built and unbuilt, like the structure you can see here. So now we can see the alternate workspace and the green space together. In work, some green spaces, seatings are provided. In some places, vendors are provided, selling the local food. And similarly, the land between the auditorium and the temple is converted into a flexible land. So this was an unused land. So I revitalized this unused space into a dynamic lawn area. So for the festivals and the celebrations, it can be transformed into a multifunctional space. So it's like this. And this is the planting palette used for the natural dye. So I can also introduce the natural dye for them as another tool. And the planting palette for the double street, I have considered the sacred trees, mostly the one with the white flowers, because that is favored by the Agastya Swami, allowing for the temple offerings. And also the other palette are, yeah.
Okay. Well, you were almost there, right, Malvika?
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liesel, would you like to take the first shot on this?
Yeah, sure. Yes, thank you for your presentation. Very clear. And I also like the idea that, you take an existing situation, you say you want to take the weavers, but you want visitors to come there, not just to sort of buy stuff, but to sort of experience the whole culture. How you're trying to, I like the idea of how you're trying to give visitors an experience of the culture and the physical place of where the weavers live and how they make how they do the weaving practice as well. I also like the drawings. Did you do the drawings yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's you don't often see hand-drawn drawings anymore. Everybody just does computer images. So yeah, also want to compliment you on the drawings.
Thank you.
Obviously, what you've done in this proposal is to look at mostly how you can improve the outside space. How you can introduce more green, or how you can introduce a new pathway, to show sort of the whole experience and to learn more about the culture. But you also mentioned something in the beginning, that the character of the buildings and the building heights are also very important. In your whole experience, your thesis focuses on the public space, but the built space or the built forms are also quite important. An important part of how you experience the public space. And I was wondering, how you were saying the character of buildings need to be strictly endorsed, and the building heights, you must prevent people from building too high. So how would you do that? How would you endorse the character of the buildings, and how would you prevent people from, building too high?
Like strict laws should be implemented. Like if we are building the height or increasing the height, the entire character of the city will be damaged. So even if we are renovating the building, it should maintain the same character. Such rules and regulations should be implemented for the entire Chalia Street.
Okay,
thereby
so
we can. Sorry?
You see that more as a policy, sort of. Through policy, you want to endorse those the character and the heights.
Yeah, I need to implement policy for this purpose.
See, I was going to, Liesel actually preempted a question which I was also thinking of asking, that the reason why in historic places buildings seem to change from their historic qualities, there is some sort of economic logic to it. Okay?
Mm.
So the question is, very often in urban design is to try to find out what that is, and also then try to give some sort of solution whereby you don't have to strictly do exactly what has been done 200 years back earlier, because some of those traits are not available anymore. Do you understand?
Yeah,
So
yeah, got it.
the logic of the building as it was being 200 years old is not there anymore. So if
Yeah.
you tell people to continue doing that, you are saddling them with economic costs which they probably can't even bear. Okay? So you
Okay.
might have something. So the trick is always try to, and you may not have made it part of your study, but it should have been a little bit, that because it decides the interface between the public space, which you are concerned with, and the building facade. The trick is to come back to the essentialities of that earlier quality and then suggest some possibilities which people have in future, which will not destroy the character, but which will let it evolve. You don't make a
Okay.
museum out of it. That would be the maybe a suggestion. Okay.
Okay.
But I'll leave it at that just now. Claudia, would you like to come in and have a question, or do you know?
I just want to reinforce what Lisa said about the visuals. You provide us with very powerful illustrations and analysis, and you had quite a challenging choice to link culture to design interventions and the issue of bringing the weavers to the forefront. I'm thinking about what could I ask is more about the follow-up that I'm now more curious about. You made a case. Now, how do you follow that up in terms of the propositions you make on really the zoning, you including the street visual, how you organize that. So what would be the follow-up? I'm more wondering whether this could be worked out.
First thing, I need to collaborate with the community itself. I need to know all their needs are satisfied. If they need anything more, then I should collaborate with the INDAC organization like they have done in Chanderi. Similarly, I can also work with them and make this possible.
Okay. Have you, in the process of your study, interacted with the community at all?
Yeah.
Or has it? Yes, you have.
Yes, yes. I have been there for 2 weeks.
Talking to some of the important people.
Yeah. Talking with the authorities as well as the people.
Okay.
That's how I collected all the data.
Okay. And have they seen your results?
Not the final one, but in between the stages, I was discussing with them. Like when I'm having any confusion or if their needs are satisfied, I used to follow up with them.
So tell me one last then question regarding your design. In the double street, if you will show me that image of your final design.
Yeah.
Because you said that it is the abundance of vehicular traffic which kills it, some of the activities, right?
Yeah.
So what you are proposing now is obviously it's like a carpet of landscaping, which from facade to facade, and you are allowing the car still to drive there at the edges.
No, actually, I am like here I have proposed a parking area. So I want only single street to be the vehicular access. All other will be the pedestrian access only, the entire street.
Okay. So that was not clear to me. That's very good. Okay, excellent. And do you think these people who live there, they will accept it? What was their reaction to?
Actually, they want something to happen because they don't know any other job. They're really struggling to find a job and like it is not profitable to them.
Okay.
So actually they want something to happen in that place.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we'll welcome Pranita Sawant from MKSS Bhanuben Nanavati College of Architecture in Pune, I presume, also a Master of Landscape Architecture course. Pranita, are you ready?
Thank you for the introduction. I'm honored to present my final semester thesis titled An Integrated Landscape Approach to Strengthen Livelihoods for Rural Agrarian Communities around MKSS's site in Dhagewadi, Satara. As the title and abstract suggest, the project is based on a rural agrarian context as these communities have strong ties with their lands and landscapes. Landscapes and livelihoods are interrelated through the attributes illustrated in the infographic. This concept stems from my previous research on the nature and communities, exploring community participation as a tool for designing urban parks. Takeaways from this research closely align with the project theme of landscape and livelihoods. The project aims to support livelihoods and improve the economic viability of agrarian communities through an integrated landscape approach that enhances their skills. Theoretical context is set by the literature and case studies. Philosophical context is set by the institutional background of MKSSS Institute, and the physical context is set by the geographical location of the site, altogether which contribute to the proposal. The project establishes its global, regional, and local association to understand issues and values and further propose broad-level strategies, policies, and a design proposal respectively. My learnings from the literature focus on the interrelation of community, economy, and ecology which derive the project diagram. Through Maharishi Karve's eternal values of Bala, that is strength, Jnana, knowledge, Seva, service, the Institute tries to build a society of equal opportunities, empowering women through a plethora of courses offered at their 6 campuses across Maharashtra, India. Their vision for this development is to facilitate economic growth, giving this project its social angle. The current nature of the site is unproductive and degraded, that's making it a brownfield landscape. This slide elaborates on the various issues that cause land degradation in rural agrarian contexts. Book and live case studies at global and regional levels were looked at, which contributed to the ideas board. Understanding the site at a regional scale of Satara district in Maharashtra, owing to the natural and man-made parameters, it is inferred that even when the district is majorly dominated by agricultural land, the tertiary sector is an economy booster. The 5-acre site is situated near the Mumbai-Satara highway in Dhagewadi of village Limb. An abandoned quarry, ad hoc structures, sparse vegetation, and distant viewscapes are observed. The study of human and non-human stakeholders, climate and annual activity wheel, activity, ownership and infrastructure mapping, visual and experience characteristics mapping, elevation, slope, geology and hydrology, vegetation, and biodiversity was carried out for the site and its immediate context to infer the issues and values. At the global level, through secondary data, it is identified that most agrarian communities have strong ties with their land, while its planning and management remain a major concern. At regional scale, traditional knowledge and land holdings are assets, while the issue is poor return on the investment for farmers. On the local level, the site and its context infrastructure and connectivity provide integrated growth opportunities, while the quarry as a resource and few pollinators observed on the site are indicators of scope for healthy restoration activities. Underutilization and lack of planning is a major issue amongst others, such as irregular grading, low and poor topsoil, and unchannelized surface water. Based on the site analysis and synthesis, the first part of my proposal provides strategies at broader level and further zooms into a site-level suggestive planning. At the broad level, strategies intend to strengthen associations at different scale through employment and creating global markets for local vendors. Additionally, animal husbandry, agrotourism, and organic farming markets for this local produce can also contribute to the economy. Restoring the degraded lands improves the local ecosystem services and redistributes resources amongst the dependent communities. The ideas board takes references from the case studies whilst exploring approaches to bring the site and its context to function as a system. Drawing these ideas on a land use and zoning plan for the area of study, the big idea and schematic sections explore the broader design approach. The suggestive land uses benefit all the stakeholders. This includes a shared community water pit, open spaces for exhibitions, workshops, training, and market areas. Existing vacant built structures can be leased to offices, seed banks, farmers' cooperative banks, research centers, and processing units. Managed grasslands and dedicated areas for permaculture, experimental cropping, pollinator and medicinal plant corridors, and organic vegetable patches for educational demonstration and commercial purposes, ecological restoration for the quarry and nearby areas through a collaborative approach with institutes and CSR initiatives. Community engagement and participation play a key role here. These programs draw people from all walks of life into an intergenerational dialogue of agriculture and allied activities. With the help of the proposed programs on the site and its surroundings, indirectly and directly contribute to environmental, social, and economic values, fostering a global, regional, and local connection to the project. For example, monetizing on plant components such as leaves, fruits, and animal husbandry raw products such as cow dung by processing them into useful products for export. Moreover, volunteer programs are envisioned to align with the quarry and grassland restoration activities with the goals of the decade of ecological restoration. The master plan illustrates the adaptive reuse of existing structures and spaces that promote collaborative, experimental, and experiential learning, restoration, and recreation. The following matrix provides policies for planting, water, landscape, and livelihood management that comply with the functional, social, ecological, economic, visual, and climatic design attributes. The planting scheme is such that it adds a holistic value to the site. For example, ecological value would be to attract pollinator species and increase biomass, and economic would be to export of products. The use of local materials, solar power, and exploring agrivoltaics is encouraged. Further zooming into each of the zones within the site, these slides illustrate the design strategies and techniques for pollinator and medicinal plant corridors, Karve Memorial, organic vegetable patches, outdoor workshop and training areas, vegetated swales and permaculture area, quarry and grassland restoration. The site proposal summary shows the different landscape programs and each of their benefits adding value to the annual activity wheel. This contributes to added income and a better living environment for both human and non-human stakeholders while enhancing their interconnectedness. For example, temporary tents and camps set up during restoration drives that will provide hospitality business opportunities for the villagers, while the organic produce grown can be sold at the nearby institutional centers or schools for midday meals. Reflecting.
Yeah. Just round it off.
Sure.
Just a couple of half a minute or something.
Thank you so much. Reflecting on the entire process of my project, my major learnings and takeaways would be the role of landscape architecture as a tool in growing economies to address the concern of creating awareness for land as a limited resource and its potential to generate revenue in a socio-ecologically sensitive way. This is possible through an integrated approach in design and planning for all stakeholders involved. In conclusion, planners and architects in agrarian economies have a responsibility to promote the sustainable use of land by addressing the site's unique context and integrating various aspects, they can create a transformative and impactful spaces that contribute to the well-being of both local and global communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Can I start by asking you a question?
Sure.
It's very interesting that you're taking Maharishi Karve's philosophical starting point and trying to now interpret it on a piece of land in the 21st century. When I looked at your drawings, I saw that your site itself is 5 acres.
Right.
But in your plans, you have included a surrounding area, which is another 15 acres, right?
Right. That is correct.
Okay. So can you tell me, who does that 5-acre site belong to? Who does the rest of the site belong to? And through which agency do you think some transformation like this will take place? Because I think it's a very interesting thing which you're suggesting, but I'm sort of wondering who owns this and how are you going to get it done?
Right. Thank you for your question, sir. So the reason that I considered the site context to be a part of the proposal is because through the site analysis, it's inferred that the nature of the land is very similar, that all of those lands are currently not in use, and they are mostly privately owned lands. Just a moment, I'll just go back to the slide. So the land around are privately owned lands, and there are a bunch of warehouses here which have been not in use for quite a few years now. And rest of the land also, on speaking with the people around, have not been in use for, like, there has been no farming activities or any other sorts of activities going on. And there's a school of the village school which is very close to the site, and then there are farmlands across the road and then beyond the buffer area that I have marked. So the idea to propose to include this as a part of the suggestive land use was that if there is land which is not being put to use, so if everyone comes together through a collaborative approach, it would be very beneficial for the individual stakeholders as well as the farmers and the local communities which would be benefiting from such a proposal. Okay,
but who does that 5-acre land belong to?
The 5-acre land belongs to the institute, MKSSS.
Okay, and they might be interested in doing something like this.
Right.
Okay, fine. I have no other questions at this moment.
Thank you.
Elisa, Claudia?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your presentation. I really like the idea that you took a derelict site that's sort of not being used in any way, and that you try and make that as the heart of a rural community, with education and with income generating activities, and that you sort of turn it around so it becomes something quite important for the community. Actually, that question that Sham asked about, who's going to organize this, who is the agency, that was a question that I had as well.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't have another question at this moment.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Claudia, do you have any question?
Not specifically. It's all in line with what Lizzo and you have said. When I look at the conclusions, something that caught my attention, which has to do with that, who owns this and who's actually, is it a local government? Is it a rural development agency or something, which has to do with the revenue generation. So is this revenue related to the economic activities that people are carrying out in the site, or is it how the local authority responsible for that, because it's done on land? So it was not clear to me whether the land belongs to whom and who is actually responsible for making viable the recovery and maintenance of the infrastructure investments there. Can you clarify that?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So, as mentioned, that these are all privately owned lands, and I also talked about a collaborative approach through community participation. So, this would mean that we would encourage the neighboring landholders and the institute to come together along with the farmers in the village to like function as a group of people that would probably appoint each of the roles as to who, but this would not be something to do with the local authorities, but just something that the landholders together would come together and work on.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just end with one comment, Pranita. Besides anything else, I'm happy that landscape architects who are in India very often asked only to come at the end and work as makeup artists in a country like this, that you and your mentor, so that's why I was looking at Dr. Swati Sahasrabudhe, have taken this subject. So I'm very happy that landscape architects are taking up this role. And that's very good. Thank you so much. I want to make an announcement, not only to you, but to all the others. I don't know, Mitali, will they be watching, do you think? Mitali? Okay. Maybe.
Yes, they will be.
So can I ask all of you, because there is an issue of the follow-up program, and I might want to correspond one-to-one with each of you on telephone. So I'd like you to establish a WhatsApp link with me. And I think at the end of the program, I'll give you my telephone number. So request all those 9 participants to establish that. Then I can just call you once and just talk to you to understand it better. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go to the next participant.
Thank you.
So we would like to now welcome Shinosuke Waswa from Delft University of Technology. Shinosuke, you might be interested to know that Claudio, Liesel, and myself, all of us are alumni of Technical TU Delft.
Cool.
So we are very keen to see that you do a good job presenting your case.
Okay.
You're studying, you're doing your MSc Architecture in Urbanism and Building Sciences, and you're welcome you to present your case.
That means we were going to be very hard on you.
Yes, of course.
Hi, everyone. Mine is a collection of stories, stories of the Batwa people, the Great Lakes Batwa people from East Africa, in a region that borders Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. One such story is that of Otabenga, Mutwa man who was taken to the United States in 1906 and exhibited in the Bronx Zoo with a chimpanzee. And in my thesis, I seek to challenge the dominant view of indigenous people and their study as the less than human, the uncivilized, and the other. Hence, the topic reframing the narrative, and I use storytelling to realize the just forest economy in Kampala city region. I'll start with the problem, which is in the city, the region, and beyond. Kampala, in the center of Uganda, has been Uganda's primary city, and it was only until 2019 that 14 other cities gained the city status. And over the past 20 years, the population of Kampala has tripled to 3.4 million. And as a result, in the city region, I use the word city region to mean areas outside the city that are more or less extensions of the city that serve the needs of the city. So as a result of the growing population, there's been an increased demand for wood, resulting in increased forest and tree cover loss. There's also been a proliferation of, as you can see in the top left, of eucalyptus. These are exotic tree species from Australia. There's been these patches coming up of eucalyptus that represent livelihoods of people in the city who grow these trees to make an extra buck. And in the bottom left, you can see these seemingly automated landscapes that are so homogeneous and have no life above or beneath. Further outside, in areas that are that have been designated protected areas, you have, for example, in the southwest, the Mgahinga National Park, which is a tourism hotspot. As a result of this, the Batwa people who once lived in the forest for centuries have been forcefully evicted. Also, when you look at the Uganda's history, pre-colonial times, you realize that traditional forest management was used through stories or instructions. But since the advent of the British and the different regulations, agreements, gazettements, and policies that came in place, the Batwa people have systematically been evicted. And it was in 1991 that they got the final blow and were removed from the forests. So in summary, we have all these layers of global, national forces, influences that trickle down and affect these indigenous peoples who are always a minority, and resulting in their social and epistemic injustices towards them. So in this project, I explored a local narrative that's based on storytelling otherwise, which is a widely explored concept, and how it can be used to realize self-determination for the Batwa people. About the method of storytelling otherwise, in many cultures across the world, and also in Africa, storytelling was historically used as a way of conveying knowledge and passing on traditions from one generation to another. And as a tool, it can be used for oppression, emancipation, or transformation. And in this study, I seek to use activism, storytelling as activism, to overcome the oppression and emancipate the Batwa people, and also to contribute to their self-determination for a transformed future. I used storytelling also in my fieldwork, and how I did this is I basically followed the life of the tree from the wood in Kampala to the forests, the tree plantations in the east, in the west in Fort Portal, and then I moved down to the national parks where the Batwa people are. So I used snowboarding, and I interviewed over 30 people, and I tried to tell the story of the forest resources through the lived lives of these people whose livelihoods depends on it. Some of the findings, I did an ethnographic study of the Batwa people, and I'll describe their endogenous forest practices. These are the Batwa people in the former Mgahinga forest, and it was interesting to see how their worldview, for example, views themselves as part of the natural environment rather than as being on top of the pyramid. Also, their value systems, and you could see how they used shrines to communicate with their shrines and sacrifices to communicate with their spiritual deities. Also, settlement patterns that started with the main house in the center and gradually grew with the size of the community. Their dwelling typologies, and many of these, all these were built from material in the forest, and some lasted over 20 years, yet they were built out of these simple materials. Also, their material culture and food culture that comes directly from what's within the forest. It's only some foods like potatoes that were, traded with surrounding farming communities. And these are some of the tools they used, like bamboo for water storage, traps for animals in the middle, and forest and fire making to the right. Yes, but their life today is they basically live a life of estrangement, and they try to survive acting as guides in these trails. Many of them still live in these temporary settlement camps because they were never compensated. And craft making continues, but it's not for their domestic use, but more for selling to earn some money. Yes, so my intervention was in the form of stories of change using a manifesto. And I used semantic analysis, analyzing interviews, documentaries, songs, and texts, and derived resistant texts, which are messages of hope, of resilience of the future, and I use those to derive values, demands, and actions, and a vision for the future. The manifesto is titled Our Way Home, that's back to the forest, and some of the demands I bring to light from the resistant texts are the ancestral land rights, apologies, restoration of livelihoods, some of the values like identity, sacrality, communality. And there are 5 main actions that include recognition. Thank you. Recognition of them as indigenous peoples by the law, reparations, self-governance, institutionalization of indigenous knowledges through archives or inclusion in the curriculum, and endogenization of the forest economy to be more locally directed. I also have a roadmap, which I won't go through, but basically it shows how to the left, all interventions that have been done before can be carried forward till 2046. So I end with, instead of a master plan, I chose to tell a story, to tell my vision through the lives of 3 children in 2046. And it starts with the little girl who wakes up in the morning, and her mom finds her mom farming, and her mom tells her to get the basket by the house and deliver it to her friend in the forest. So she walks along the streets, and as she walks to the community center, she realizes that the streets are empty because it's the Commemoration Day. This has now been enacted. And she meets her cousin. And as they reach the forest, they meet their friend, and the mother receives the potatoes and puts them in front of the shrine to worship their ancestors. And as they talk, the day moves quickly, and as they are leaving the place, their friend walks them through the new forest because part of the forest has been reforested. And he says goodbye, and I'll see you in the next after 6 sunsets. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Shinosuke.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Do I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, Shinosuke, but Shino is also fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Shinosuke. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any, just a personal question, do you have any special connection to that particular area of Uganda, personally?
No, I don't.
How did you get interested in the Batwa people? I would be interested.
Yes. You know, from the outset, I didn't plan to do this. So I used the snowballing method and basically interviewed people on referral basis. And somehow I ended up knowing about these people, and I decided to go there. So that's how, yes.
Okay, good, yeah. Fine.
Yeah.
Yes. Claudio Liesel?
Yes, I have, well, yeah, a question.
Yes.
No, first of all, I really liked your presentation. Yeah, with a very, very clear presentation, and I also liked the drawings that you made, and I liked, yeah, the way that you approached the thesis by doing it by storytelling. You know, instead of doing a design, doing a story, and behind the story, you sort of, yeah, you realize what the design interventions are. Mm-hmm. So yeah, yes. So I like this approach, very, very different to what one usually sees. You propose sort of, you had one slide where you sort of proposed a few new interventions. You know, you had existing interventions which you say, okay, these can continue, and you have new interventions. Could you just just very briefly tell us what the new interventions are?
Yes. Yes, so Uganda hasn't signed the UN declaration for 2007 that sort of gives rights to the indigenous people. So there are many, that and also the ILO convention of 1989. So some of the new interventions in that regard here are I have activists and NGOs to pressure the government to endorse those declarations. And then I also have, as a result of that, things like healing circles, because the pain and the suffering that these people have gone through has not been recognized in any way. So I have at a local level that initiating healing circles, also awareness campaigns, and an open access cultural archive, because many of these materials were told through stories and they die when the old people die. So finding ways of archiving that material and documenting, like I've done. And also things like indigenous people's rights policies. Here I borrowed from the Philippines, New Zealand, and other places where these are recognized. Things like indigenous people's lands rights mapping, because these ancestral lands are they don't have land titles. So there is some mapping that has been done, for example, in Indonesia to sort of specialize that. Those are some of the few interventions. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question was also related to that, and because I feel you focus on the storytelling manifesto, but actually for the realization of your manifesto, you actually have to have policies in place, and that's what I was missing in your propositions, because if the ILO 169 has been adopted by Uganda and ratified, that means it needs to be translated into ordinary law that recognizes the rights of indigenous people. And then the question is, how do you put that in place in terms of implementation and the benefits that it has on indigenous people? So that, can you do you elaborate that in your thesis, or you just leave as you show it here?
No, I elaborate on that, and I think one of the main things I elaborate on this in my thesis, but it's a lot of text documentation, so I didn't include it here. But one of the main things, as you can see, is the Act as well as the Constitution. So I got a snippet of the Constitution that highlights the indigenous tribes that are recognized by law, and I sort of build onto that based on an analysis of other similar documentation done elsewhere. And yes, I actually capture it in the thesis in more detail.
Can I, Shinosuke, a couple of years back, we had an entry for DAIDA Awards. I don't remember which university. I think it was from Catholic University Leuven, of a girl who came originally from Uruguay, and she had done a study which had similar sort of issues. How is the life of the indigenous people in the peri-urban areas or regions just outside the cities are being destroyed, and how their cultural practices, but also their livelihood, effectively, because they are intermingled, they're being torn down. And she had done this analysis, but at the end she had still taken a site and tried to show what it could mean in the sense of physical things about replanting part of the forest in different ways or whatever, so that the cultural practices could come back, etc. And we had, I think she got an award, if I'm not wrong, the second prize or something, but I don't remember it that well. By the way, I really enjoyed reading your thesis, and the fact that you would like to put it in the sort of a book or a documentation is very interesting. But otherwise, I mean, I guess we are running out of time, and thank you for your presentation. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have the second last presentation for today. Now this name I'm going to have difficulty pronouncing, so Rickson. Is it Rickson? Yes?
Yes, correctly. Yeah.
Okay, correctly. So, okay, and the second part is Mapangombe. Is that right? No.
Panangombe.
Okay. So welcome. You are from the University of Cape Town in South Africa, which has also participated often. Last time, I think the third prize winner was from your university too. You are a student of Master of City and Regional Planning. So welcome. You have 8 minutes. Your case.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rickson Panangombe. I'm a Malawian student at the University of Cape Town, and I'll be presenting to you my thesis for the Master of City and Regional Planning entitled Addressing Car Dependency in Cape Town, reviewing how the city's mobility and spatial frameworks can transcend car-oriented urbanism. Next, please. So, to understand how these theses relate to the theme of this competition, we have to go back to the background, which is the city of Cape Town. Next, please. So the city of Cape Town, next, please. The city of Cape Town is South Africa's second largest city after Johannesburg, with a population of about 4.5 million, and it is also one of the 3 capital cities in South Africa, home to the legislature. Next, please. And so this city is characterized by 2 main attributes of its spatial structure, one being sprawl, and then the second one being apartheid spatial legacy. And with this second characteristic is where I'm going to define how minorities play out in relation to the topic that I have for my thesis. Next, please. So the city of Cape Town is situated on the Cape Peninsula, as seen on the image, off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. Next, please. And this image shows us what is called the city bore, or the inner city area, where the city center is located in the square. And you can see the rest of the city is quite spread further away from that urban core. And this rest of the city is testament to the previous racialized segregation policies of South Africa, because that is where the townships for Black people and people of color were established during apartheid. And because of this spatial structure, it means that there's a lot of tidal flow almost on a daily basis, where people move from these far-flung areas going into the city, and they go back as well. Hence, the focus of my topic is on how people move around the city. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so as you can see here, there's also a spatial mismatch with the areas that are closer to the city center having more employment density versus the areas that are further away, which are the areas that, next please, previously used to house only people of color. As you can see on the map on the right there, the areas that have lots of socioeconomic opportunities are still majority white neighborhoods, even though we are 3 decades after apartheid spatial planning. So there's still this big sort of structure that is imprinting the spatial system. And next, please. That spatial structure has been replaced with what we can call socio-economic class apartheid. So car dependency has become a significant issue in the city, because a lot of the city's transport policies and urban development policies have been said to have contributed to this sort of situation. Next, please. So my research focused on the issue of car dependency, because there's this well-off minority that seems to be catered for in terms of the spatial planning and urban development planning, but yet the majority of residents, who are minorities in the essence of being marginalized, rely on informal public transit and also spend up to 45% of the income commuting was around trying to understand how the city of Cape Town, which is the municipal government, addresses this issue of car dependency. Next, please. So my focus with this dissertation was not a spatial focus, rather it was a policy focus, which took qualitative research approach in the form of a case study delimiting the Cape Town Metropolitan Municipality, but also the key transport and spatial planning kind of policies. And I used the technique of discourse analysis to analyze the data. Next, please. So these are the sort of screenshots of the documents that the research was evaluating, and I complemented that with key informant interviews. But there's also a limitation that happened during the time of the research because these documents were being updated. So some of the findings might have been outdated or might have referred to things that were changed in the subsequent document. Next, please. So to evaluate these documents, there were some criteria that were established from literature. And the first one related to how the city's policies recognize car dependency as an issue. And the finding on that is that there was a lot of implying that car dependency in a way is an issue, but the policies do not explicitly state car dependence as an issue. The other criteria that I was looking at was how they allocate infrastructure to automobility. And the other criteria included sort of if there's a recognition for a need to transition, how human beings are centered in space in these policies, and also how different parts of the city with different fabrics are treated by the policies. So moving on to the next slide, the general outcomes or the findings that I got from this analysis was that there's quite a reluctance to call out car dependency, especially in the traffic transport plan. But also there's this, there's this emphasis on transport costs for lower incomes, which in a way overlooks this system problem of embedded car dependency. And also urban fabrics are quite treated similarly across the city without regard to the fine-grained details or differences with areas. And next slide, please. So my intervention proposals were still predominantly policy, including naming the problem, but also setting targets for less car dependency in the way these policies are developed and also the metrics that are used to track. And from there, I developed my, in the next slide, please, the project that I proposed for this award, which is a follow-up, because my project focused entirely on the policies themselves and sort of discourse what is written in the policies and trying to make sense of that. I think the follow-up project for my thesis then is now trying to specialize this impact of car dependency. So I think in the Q&A, I'll have time maybe to go through that if time allows.
Yeah, just give us a
Thank
moment.
you very much for listening.
Yes. First, we will concentrate on the thesis itself, right? So your last slide of the thesis, the last recommendation was that slide. Is that right? With just
yes,
go back one slide. Can we go back one slide, please? Yes. Okay. Liesl, Claudio, any questions?
Yeah, somehow I got thrown out of the Zoom call halfway through the presentation. Oh. So I think maybe Claudio should, Claudio, if you have a question, go ahead, so that I can sort of think about about my question.
Okay. Well, thank you for the presentation. Visually quite interesting. And I did not study, but I did some work there in Cape Town during my time as UN Habitat. And I worked with an organization called DAG, Development Action Group, who was looking at the densities and trying to introduce, as you picked up, the issue of getting more people in certain locations because the mobility was quite impactful on people's life. So you suggest here naming the problem. So recognizing and make it public and more visible that the problem exists. And then you suggest here, as I understand, spatial transformation strategies. So can you clarify what do you mean by that? Does it have to do with land use? Does it have to do with kind of incrementing some different types of development, housing supply, job opportunities? What is that?
All right, thank you very much for that question. So here, when I talk about the spatial transformation strategies, it's in response to what I found. So there's already kind of work that is going on by the City of Cape Town, but based on the criteria that I was using to evaluate this work, I found out that, for example, if you can go to the previous slide, please. A lot of the strategies are around nodes and corridors, but then there's
previous slide,
one
please.
challenge. There's one challenge.
Can we have the previous slide, please?
Okay, yes, as illustrated in these two maps from the City of Cape Town. So the one of the main kind of constraints to achieving these sort of strategies that they already have is that the densities in Cape Town are quite low to be able to achieve articulated densities that would support this sort of corridor ideals that are being based. So this is sort of a long-term vision which doesn't have some sort of incremental practical steps with regard to how to treat this built environment, because it's so sprawled, it's got very low densities that do not make sort of economic sense for these robust transport and integrated land use policies. So my recommendation then was inspired by the work of some researchers from Australia. Their name just skipped my mind. Oh, Newman and Kenworthy, who talk about trying to treat different fabrics accordingly. So in a very suburban area, for example, we find out the plans of City of Cape Town would propose a corridor to pass through that area, but in actual sense, maybe transforming a suburb area which has single dwellings surrounded by big lots of yard into, let's say, multi-story buildings that have so many functions. It's not as directly, but maybe there are other parts of the city where that already can be done. So there's enough density already, but maybe you just need to upgrade the dwellings of that particular space, or you need to introduce some kind of functional mix apart from residential. So that's what the fabrics that I talk about, sort of tailoring these strategies based on that specific fabric instead of having this general policy, which is great, but then in practice is quite difficult to achieve. And there are no steps even in the policy that talk about how to incrementally actually get to that point. It's very broad and kind of general.
Thank you.
I hope I've answered the question.
Liesl, do you have any question?
Yes, yes, I do, because at the moment, you've focused sort of only on policy and what policies say about car dependency. And, I think naming car dependency or just admitting that car dependency is a problem is one of the that would be a good thing in the policy. But I think that by changing the policy, you won't, by changing only the policies, you won't reduce car dependency in Cape Town, or not only by that, you also need to take other measures in place. I think one of the big issues is that public transport in Cape Town is so unsafe. It has become so unsafe. So by only changing the policy, I think you won't have the required. You need to do multiple things to reduce car dependency. So could you sort of comment on that? You didn't look at that at all, or yeah?
No,
Could you just
you're actually right that there are many other things that have to go in place. I think I've sort of tried to summarize for these 8 minutes, sort of to make it high level. But in the actual thesis document, I talk about not only the policy as the starting point, because the policy guides everything, right? And then beyond the policy, that's when you need to sort of align that policy with what is going on ground. So part of the kind of suggestions that I made from a policy point of view is what I've already talked about, but then also going beyond with the public transport plan. So currently the public transport plan focuses mostly on low income groups, which is appropriate because they are the majority who are using the public transport. But in doing so, through the fine print of the work, it seems that because there's crime, high levels of crime on the public transport, there's encroachment on railways, for example, it is seen more of a problem that is beyond the municipality themselves. So one of my suggestions is that public transport should start being promoted not only for lower incomes, but also in medium and higher incomes, so that if everyone is using public transport, then there's more incentive to work for the entire public transport system. On the urban fabric suggestions, I also went into some kind of preliminary suggestions of how to do sort of road dieting in some parts based on the kind of fabric of the area, how to sort of to use temporal urbanism or tactical urbanism in some parts as a form of kind of promoting this idea. So my proposals are mostly tailored to kind of fabrics. So in a neighborhood where everyone has a car, maybe the best strategy there is to start maybe an open streets event so that people are enticed to that and then start progressively moving from there. Whereas in some neighborhoods where everyone walks already, then maybe an open street event might not be as exciting. So there has to be some tailored kind of programs for that specific area as well. So maybe the limitation then has to be these 3 documents that I was looking at. They were quite lengthy kind of documents, including budgets and whatnot, a lot of things. So the project was limited to that. It did not go to the next step of how that manifests in the spatial realm and the like, which is why I'm proposing something to move in that direction as a follow-up.
Okay, Rickson, I'm afraid because of time limitations, we'll have to stop now. Thank you for your explanation, and thank you for your presentation. And we'll now go to the final presentation of the day. Which is for a project from Bangladesh, presented by Zanat Khani of University of Twente, and her program is Geoinformation Science and Earth Observation. So Zanat, floor is yours.
While growing up in a small town in the northern part of Bangladesh, I had the opportunity to experience nature throughout my childhood. Like in front of our house, there were fruit trees and flower gardens, and on the backside, there would be like bamboo thickets, and people would say witches live in the bamboo thickets to scare us. Just 5 minutes walk from my home, there would be acres after acres of crop fields, which would be lush green. However, when I visited my home 3 years back, everything was gone. Everything was covered with concrete, and there was only buildings after buildings, where no greenery to be seen. So this is not only the scenario of my hometown, this is the scenario of most of the urban areas of Bangladesh. Newly formed urban areas and lower income communities suffer from environmental injustice, whereas higher income communities are planned with adequate green and blue elements. So based on these perceptions and my personal experiences, nature-based solution and environmental justice is very close to my heart. Thus, I chose the topic environmental justice, assessing the scope of nature-based solution to be my, with the capability approach, to be my thesis topic for my master's program. So what is environmental injustice? It is the unequal distribution of environmental goods and bads in 3 dimensions, which are recognition, procedural, and distributive injustices. Throughout the country, governments tries to renature those lower income communities, but it has the possibility to create the effect of green gentrification. So based on these problems, my research question was, how can traditional nature-based solution promote urban environmental justice in Bangladesh utilizing the capability approach? For the study area, Dhaka City Corporation was selected because of its location in the global south. The concept of nature-based solution not being explored in context of Dhaka City and proof of diminishing environmental elements. So the first objective was to construct an urban environmental justice index to select areas which suffer from environmental injustice. 15 indicators were selected to create the environmental justice index, and these were based on 3 categories, which are social disadvantages, environmental risk, and environmental green and blue spaces benefits. And this is the environmental justice index that was created. Here, the dark green areas are areas which have adequate or more greeneries and blue elements, whereas the lighter colored areas are suffer from environmental injustice. So based on this injustice and consultation with local planners, we have selected this study area, Kamrangirchor, to be as a study area for further interventions because of its unique location, high build-up area, low vegetation, and irregular, very narrow road pattern. These are some pictures from the study area where we can see it is very polluted. So for the next objective, we tried to understand what are the traditional nature-based solutions in urban areas of Bangladesh. For that, we conducted 12 semi-structured interviews with nature-based solution experts. So these are the traditional nature-based solutions of Dhaka City, which were categorized in a smaller scale, low maintenance, a small scale, high maintenance, larger scale low maintenance, and larger scale high maintenance nature-based solutions. For example, balcony garden and rooftop garden can be termed as a smaller scale nature solutions, whereas wetlands can be termed as large scale nature-based solutions. Also, we try to identify the stakeholders from the interview, and then we created a power mapping with the intersection of power and interest with the stakeholders. From that, we identified the ministries, planning commission, international donors, and NGOs to be the stakeholders who have high power and high interest in nature-based solution implementation, while stakeholders such as individual residents and marginalized people to be high interest but low power stakeholders. So our next intervention was based on this high interest, low power community people. So we applied the capability approach in terms of implementing the nature-based solutions through a questionnaire survey. So the capability approach was conceptualized, and from that, we identified the elements of capability approach to be resources, conversion factors, capability set, functioning, and well-being achievement. So this is a very simplified example of the capability approach of how we conceptualized it. So available space in the rooftop can be termed as resource. However, conversion factors such as lack of interest or lack of monetary means can hinder people not to have rooftop garden in their houses. So this is actual functioning. But if the desired functioning is to have a rooftop garden, interventions such as creating interest or tax reduction, social safety nets can influence people to have rooftop garden in their houses. So the main objective is to reduce the gap between the actual functioning and desired functioning. And for that, our next intervention was planned to propose capability-oriented nature-based solution design principles for just decision-making for nature-based solution implementation. For that, we conducted a nature-based solution co-design workshop based in the selected community. Here, we involved people to envision a desired future with nature-based solution, and with backcasting method, we came up with strategies which was further integrated with 4 nature-based solution design principles to create a policy base for from upper level interventions. So these design principles are: nature-based solution should be place specific, it should be a part of a system, it should benefit both people and biodiversity, and it should be an iterative process of communication of learning with the community people. So, yeah. So how the thesis method is contributing towards the elements of environmental justice. So the thesis instruments, like thesis method provide instruments how environmental justice can be achieved. So for example, the Environmental Justice Index and the Capability Approach application identifies the needs and preferences of the community people contributing to recognition of justice. The expert engagement and co-design of the nature-based solution it contributes to procedural justice, whereas a smaller scale nature-based solution and then implementation and the design principle contributes towards having access for the lower income community in the selected study area. And for recommendation for urban planning, we recommended that the community should be just green enough with a smaller scale nature-based solutions, and larger scale nature-based solutions should be designed, implemented outside the boundary of the lower income community, so that the gentrification effect of implementing the larger scale nature-based solution diminishes towards the core of the community. So this is all. Thank you for having me today for this, for presenting my thesis work. Thank you.
Thank you, Zalnat, for your presentation. I think very well presented within the time limit, so compliments for that to start with. And Liesl and Claudio, if you have any questions, you can start. Liesl, do you have something?
Yes, I have a question. I was thinking, you sort of showed an example where you said that a reason why somebody, for example, won't make a green rooftop is because they don't have the finances for it. And then you suggest, okay, you could sort of reduce taxes so that people have more money, so that they have the financial means to make a rooftop garden. So I was thinking, how can one encourage low-income houses or low-income residents to use, if they get more income, not to spend it on something else, but to spend it on bringing nature-based solutions into their house or onto their property, because somebody can make another choice. They could choose, okay, if I have extra money, I would rather buy a better meal, than create more green.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to ask one more question to this, Zalnat, so maybe you can look. See, well, on the one hand, I think you would like to promote nature-based solutions, because you started with this narrative that where I used to live, it was nice and it was green. Okay, and now there isn't I'm saying it very black and white, but now there isn't any. Then you go down to this situation where you try to analyze how something can be achieved in that area. And then later on at the end, you come with the recommendation that the nature-based solution should not be too big, because then there is a risk of gentrification, so that these people, because if the area, as it were, I'm just putting it in my words, what you're saying is if the area becomes just too good, that's also not what we want, because then these people will have to move because somebody else will buy them into this area.
Yes.
Is that right, what I understand? I mean, or am I getting it wrong?
Yeah, no, it is perfectly right. Like, to my point, it's not about when we are transitioning from rural to urban areas, but my concern is with the existing urban areas which are not planned and which doesn't have sufficient green and blue elements. So how can we incorporate green and blue elements in those areas that doesn't create the effect of green gentrification? So if we talk about the transition from rural to urban areas, we need to, like, from nature-based solution perspective, we need to first conserve the green and blue elements and then try to implement other. But when there is nothing in the study area, so I tried to build up on that and proposed a small-scale nature-based solution, like to have like greeneries for the community, which is not too much, so that the effects of green gentrification would happen.
Okay.
Do I answer your question?
Just one more question regarding the size of the neighborhood. I'm always interested in knowing, when you select a neighborhood, how many people are living there? Any idea of this?
Yeah, there are around 1.2 million people living in 3.2 kilometer square area. So you can understand it's very dense, very dense populated area.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we're dealing with the most densely populated countries in the world, so that's what to expect. Could you go back to the slide right before the recommendation quickly, so I can very quickly ask you a question?
Right before the recommendation. But I think I didn't answer Liesel's question. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, in the conclusion.
Yeah, this one, as I presume you said. So let me first answer Liesel's question. So how we perceived the capability approach, like to reduce the gap between the actual and desired functioning. So when in the lower income community, when we ask them if you have the financial capacity to implement like this a smaller scale nature-based solution, some said, yes, we have that, even if like we are not living in a higher income community. Some said we have that, and some of them said also like they have the interest to do so, but maybe for time constraint or other reasons they cannot do it. So we need to focus on the people. If we think about the monetary means, we need to focus on the people who said they don't have the monetary means to implement nature-based solution. And for that, government interventions or interventions from NGOs, like I know that ICLEI works in Bangladesh, or IUCN. So interventions from them can reduce the capability gap of those people who said they don't have the financial capacity to have the financial capacity to implement nature-based solution design principles. And because it was very place-specific, it was not a slum area per se, but it was a very lower income community. So they have the provision like spaces in their like rooftops, or some have even balconies to implement this kind of a small scale nature-based solution. Do I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Claudio,
yes.
you had a question.
Claudio. Yeah. You make this contribution and come up with the recommendation, and I'm trying to make a logic story about your suggestions here, the contribution of the environmental justice principles on small scale, community-based, and and then using the capability-oriented design principles. I'm trying to understand the operationalization of the capability method that you adopted, which I found quite interesting, into the design proposals that you recommend.
Yeah. So with the capability approach implementation, we came up with the challenges. Like, for example, some people doesn't have the monetary means to implement nature-based solution in their community. So that is the challenge that we come up with, and it is like a gap between their actual functioning and desired functioning. And from that challenges, what kind of strategies are required, we come up from the co-design workshop that we implemented with the community people. And we try to put the strategies under the design principles that is prescribed by renowned authors, so that we are not just prescribing anything that doesn't make any sense, but try to link it with prescriptions of renowned author.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
One last question to you, Zanab.
Yes.
I have never been to Dhaka. Okay.
Yes.
So if my question is not relevant to you, just say it's not relevant. But from what I understand about the issues of climate change and a lot of Bangladeshi urban centers, that climate change is creating a problem in a lot of places because of issues of water level. Okay.
Yes.
I would have expected, or did you consider in your study the fact that in a place which has 1 million people, there are a lot of public spaces. There may be small streets, but they're still public spaces. So when you are considering nature-based solution, you sort of jumped to the level of individual houses. But did you consider doing something with public spaces also? Because at the end you had a scheme showing individual houses, but then you said all the public space only at the periphery of an area of 3.2 square kilometers. But there are lots of little streets, etc., where something could be done. Because I know there are solutions which Claudio is very aware of it, because I think UN had UN Habitat, if I'm not wrong, under Claudio had financed a study done by Banashri Banerjee at that time with you, right, Claudio? About the fact that very tightly knit urban centers in which actually you upgrade them by doing something with the public spaces more, and then let everybody do their individual thing themselves. It sort of it promotes. So did something with public space play a role in your study at all, or for some reason you left it out?
For example, when we were asking the questions like what kind of nature-based solution the community have in their community, there are some spaces came up, such as like the open spaces in front of hospitals or schools.
Mm-hmm.
But those are very limited, like public spaces. And the community people doesn't have any authority to implement anything on those public spaces. Because we were trying to design initiatives which are bottom up and require like very minimum less from the people. And about the periphery, because it's like it's surrounded by the river Buriganga, because it's very sandy land, and it's like in the periphery of the study area, they have like the belt with the river banks, but right now it is very polluted. So maybe with some initiatives from the government or even NGOs, the community people can actually maintain the river banks, because it's not a very large area. So I think it is doable.
Okay.
That's why
Okay. No, I understand. Thank you so much for your presentation. So I think with that, we come to the end of our 9 sessions which we have had. Like I said, the series of this program of today has been recorded and will also be available to Claudio, Liesel, Anita, and myself to relook at it if we want. And in about 4 weeks' time, and I think on the site of My Level City, it's given, I think it's on the 23rd of February, if I'm not wrong, the final awards will be announced. Let me take this opportunity to thank you all for participating. Let me thank particularly Lisa and Claudia, who are present now, for being here, and Anita for taking the time to have helped us make the shortlist. I want to repeat what I said in between once again, that DAIDA likes to have a particular amount of money. It's not a great amount of money, but still 5,000 euros available for follow-up program. With follow-up, what we mean is that something of what you are suggested in the master's thesis can be implemented in one way or the other. Now, that's a very difficult one, particularly if you take a project of the size which Girisha Sethi has taken or some others have taken. The larger the project, the less difficult it is to follow up, of course. I understand that. And yet the seeds can be sown sometimes and something might grow out of it. So I would like to discuss, because some of you have suggested follow-up programs which are again inadequate. Some, I think, if we can discuss a little, maybe something else can come out of it. So I'd like to individually discuss with each of you just the follow-up bits. That has nothing to do with the awards. The first, second, third prizes we will give as we have decided on the basis of the thesis. But the follow-up can be given to one of you or to two of you, etc., depending on where they can still be a viable solution can be created, which DAIDA would like to have, which means that it's not necessarily the academic excellence of the report, but it's the doability of something. Okay, so I will repeat, or Mitali, will you be able to send my mobile number to all the participants? Yes. So if Mitali will send you my mobile number, and I'd like to converse with you on WhatsApp a little, and then just call you and have a discussion on your follow-up program so that we come to some sort of conclusion on that. Thank you so much again, and we look forward to seeing you, all of you, in February on the big day. Goodbye.
Thank you.